This is Raw, audio stories by Sanity by Tanmoy, an independent platform dedicated to the politics, economics and culture of mental health. Today's story:
Mental health and trauma in conflict and war zones, with psychiatrist Joseph El-Khoury.
World War I was a big turning point. You had all these damaged soldiers, coming back home. They were not injured physically, but they could not fight. They could not go back to their families. And this is where military psychiatrists start to grow, to be invested in. And you can follow all this path up to Vietnam. And having worked with refugees on the Lebanese-Syrian border in 2012, at a time where the war in Syria was really heavy, people were dying by the droves, that I would sit in a clinic and talk to a refugee, and she wouldn't want to talk about the war. She would talk about her mother-in-law, because suddenly she was living in a tent with an extended family, and that wasn't the case in her village. And conflict should not be just about war. It should be about, again, economic conflict. It should be about famine. It should be about Haiti is a conflict zone, although there is no open war there. Venezuela is a conflict zone. I think what we can do, and I think what I've seen a lot of people do, is to say the truth. A lot of what's happening in Afghanistan is not being validated by, for example, mainstream media.
Joseph El-Khoury grew up in Lebanon at the height of the civil war in that country from the mid-70s to 1990, which killed over 100,000 people and displaced another million. With first-hand experience of war trauma, he decided to become a psychiatrist, studied and worked in the West, and then returned to his country to help his people. He trained himself in conflict medicine and worked with refugees from neighbouring Syria who fled the Syrian war. But then last year, El-Khoury had to leave his home country again in the wake of a severe political and economic collapse. Lebanon is in the middle of a financial meltdown. The lack of political leadership, soaring fuel prices, vanishing essential services, and a looming drinking water crunch have pushed the country to the brink of a frightening humanitarian crisis. As someone who understands what it means to live in a troubled country, Joseph El-Khoury has powerful perspectives on the flawed assumptions people from the outside looking in tend to make about the words conflict and war. I have long admired his tweets about the socio-political and economic factors behind human suffering. I spent 14 years of my life outside Lebanon, he recently tweeted. I returned to settle in my home country, build a family and a career. I am not lucky that I got to leave again. At this stage, we are in exile, not expats. When the tragedy in Afghanistan unfolded, I reached out to El-Khoury, who was a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists in the UK and president-elect of the Lebanese Psychiatric Society, to understand what constant conflict and war do to the human mind, the possibility of hope, and what the rest of the world can do to help heal the wounds of war.